made in the heat of greed, would soon force Traoré to confront not only his enemies, but the very ideals he held dear, revealing a truth that would echo far beyond the clearing where it all began. The morning was serene, the air thick with the scent of earth and promise. Traoré, ever the man of the people, had chosen simplicity for this trip, shunning the trappings of power to connect with communities transformed by his land reforms. His convoy, 3 armored vehicles and a leading jeep, moved steadily, a symbol of progress in a nation striving for dignity. Yusuf, in the front, was more than a protector. He was a brother in arms, their bond sealed in the northern insurgencies. But the night before, a whispered offer had fractured that trust. $5 million for Traoré's itinerary, a deal cloaked in shadows and foreign ambition. As the convoy rolled on, Yusuf's heart wrestled with his choice, unaware that the plan he thought would spare Traoré was a trap far darker than he could imagine. In the third vehicle, Traoré spoke of irrigation and progress, oblivious to the storm gathering around him, his faith in his team unshaken, until the road diverged and the truth began to unravel. The dusty road stretched endlessly before Ibrahim Traoré's convoy, a ribbon of earth connecting the heart of Burkina Faso to its rural soul. Inside the third armored vehicle, Traoré leaned over a map, his eyes bright with purpose as he discussed irrigation systems with his assistant, Ousmane. "These communities," he said, tracing a finger across the paper, "they're not just surviving anymore, they're thriving. That's what keeps me grounded." Ousmane nodded, his admiration for Traoré's vision evident. "Mr. President, your presence here shows them they're not forgotten. It's more than policy. It's hope." Traoré smiled, gazing out at the passing fields, unaware that the man he trusted most was steering them toward betrayal. In the leading jeep, Yusuf gripped the radio, his knuckles pale against the dark plastic. His face, usually a mask of resolve, betrayed a flicker of unease. The night before, in a dimly lit room far from prying eyes, the conspirators had made their offer. $5 million to deliver Traoré's movement. "No harm will come to him," they had assured, their voices smooth as oil. "Just ensure he's isolated." Yusuf had hesitated, his loyalty to Traoré clashing with the promise of wealth that could lift his family from hardship. He told himself he was protecting Traoré by diverting him to safety, that the look-alike officer in the second vehicle would maintain the illusion of security. But the weight of his choice pressed harder with every mile. The convoy hummed along, the landscape shifting from open fields to denser scrubland. Traoré, still engrossed in his plans, didn't notice the subtle change in Yusuf's demeanor over the radio. "All clear ahead," Yusuf reported, his voice steady, but his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. The conspirators' plan was simple, yet ruthless. Isolate Traoré, replace him with the doppelganger, and use the president as leverage to bend Burkina Faso's government to foreign will. The look-alike, a carefully chosen officer with Traoré's build and features, sat silently in the second vehicle, ready to play his part. Yusuf's role was to lead the convoy to a remote clearing, where Traoré would be secured. He convinced himself it was a temporary detour, a harmless ruse. But the conspirators had no intention of letting Traoré walk away. Traoré's instincts, honed by years of facing danger, began to stir. He noticed Yusuf's clipped responses, the way his hand lingered on the radio. "Something feels off," he murmured to Ousmane, his voice low. Ousmane, ever vigilant, adjusted his posture, his hand brushing the holster beneath his coat. "I've noticed it too, sir." "Yusuf's not himself." Traoré nodded, his mind racing. He trusted Yusuf, had fought beside him in the north, shared meals and laughter. Betrayal seemed unthinkable, yet the air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. The convoy slowed as Yusuf signaled a stop. "Technical issue with the engine," he announced over the radio, his tone rehearsed. We need to take an alternate route. Traoré leaned out the window, his brow furrowing. Is this necessary, Yusuf? He asked, his voice calm but probing. Yusuf avoided his gaze, wiping sweat from his forehead. Just a precaution, sir. Safer this way. The convoy veered onto a secondary road, the path narrowing as dense vegetation closed in. Traoré's unease grew, his chest tightening. Usmane, he whispered. Be ready for anything. Usmane's eyes hardened, his hand now resting on his weapon. Yusuf's radio crackled with encrypted messages, his voice barely audible as he relayed coordinates to the conspirators. Approaching the diversion point, he said, his throat dry. The response was immediate. Good. Isolate the target. No mistakes. Yusuf's hands trembled, the promise of wealth now a chain around his conscience. He glanced back at Traoré's vehicle, his heart sinking. He had sworn to protect this man, this nation. Yet here he was, leading them into a trap. The convoy halted in a secluded clearing, the silence oppressive. Traoré stepped out, his expression cautious but composed. He scanned the trees, sensing the wrongness of the place. Usmane stayed close, his eyes darting between Yusuf and the shadows. This doesn't add up, Traoré said softly, his voice steady. Yusuf approached, his usual confidence faltering. Just need to check the engine, sir, he said, but his hands betrayed him, shaking slightly. Traoré's gaze locked onto him, searching for the man he knew. Are you all right, Yusuf? He asked, his tone firm yet tinged with concern. Yusuf froze, his resolve crumbling under Traoré's scrutiny. Before he could answer, Usmane's voice cut through the tension. Mr. President, the man in the second vehicle, he's not one of ours. Traoré turned, his heart pounding as he spotted the look-alike officer, eerily similar, yet unmistakably foreign. The pieces fell into place. Yusuf, Traoré said, his voice heavy with betrayal. What have you done? The clearing in Burkina Faso's backcountry was a crucible of tension, the air thick with the weight of betrayal. IBRAHIM TRAORÉ stood at its center, his gaze piercing through Yusuf, whose head hung low, unable to meet the eyes of the man he had sworn to protect. What did you do? Traoré's voice, though calm, carried the sting of disappointment echoing across the silent expanse. Yusuf's confession came in a broken whisper. They promised money, sir, for my family. Traoré's heart clenched, not just at the betrayal, but at the desperation that had driven his comrade to this point. Yet as the conspirators emerged from the shadowed trees, armed and resolute, Traoré knew this was no time for sentiment. The future of his nation hung in the balance. Usmane, ever loyal, shoved Traoré behind a tree, his hand gripping the pistol under his coat. Sir, we need to move. Now, he urged, his eyes scanning the advancing figures. But Traoré remained still, his mind racing. Running would only delay the inevitable. Confronting this treachery head-on was the only path. He stepped forward, raising his hands to show he was unarmed, his presence commanding despite the danger. Do you think $5 million is worth more than a nation's future? He asked, his voice resonant, addressing not just the conspirators but Yusuf, whose guilt was etched in every line of his face. The conspirators, a mix of foreign operatives and local mercenaries, hesitated. Their leader, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, sneered, leveling his gun at Traoré. You're out of moves, President. Come quietly, and no one gets hurt. Traoré's eyes gleamed with defiance. I always have a choice, he said, and my choice is to fight for my people. His words, laced with unshakable conviction, stirred something in the clearing. Usmane and the loyal security team fanned out, their weapons drawn but held low, ready to act on Traoré's signal. Yusuf, still kneeling, looked up, tears streaming down his face. Mr. President, I didn't know it would come to this, he choked out. Traoré's gaze softened, but only for a moment. You made a choice, Yusuf. Now you'll see what it costs. Turning to the conspirators, Traoré continued, You think you can buy Burkina Faso's soul? You underestimate us. His voice rose, steady and thunderous. Our dignity, our pride, our destiny. These are not for sale. The conspirators exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering. They had expected a cowed politician, not a leader who faced death with such resolve. Usman whispered urgently, Sir, we're outnumbered. Let us get you out. But Traoré shook his head, his decision made. He locked eyes with Yusuf, who was trembling under the weight of his shame. Yusuf, Traoré said, his tone both stern and compassionate. I trusted you with my life. You fought beside me, bled for this country. What did they offer that was worth more than that? Yusuf's voice broke. They said they'd save my family. I thought I could keep you safe. Traoré sighed, a mix of anger and empathy in his breath. He knew poverty could twist even the strongest bonds, but betrayal cut deep. The conspirators' leader grew impatient. Enough talk, he barked, stepping closer. You're coming with us, or we end this here. Traoré didn't flinch. You may kill me, he said, his voice carrying the weight of a nation. But you'll never kill what we're building. Burkina Faso will rise, with or without me. His words struck like a hammer, and for a moment the clearing was silent, the conspirators frozen by the force of his conviction. Ousmane and the team edged closer, their loyalty a palpable force, ready to defend their president to the last. Yusuf, overwhelmed, rose shakily to his feet. I was wrong, he said, his voice barely audible. I can't let this happen. He turned toward the conspirators, his hand hovering over his weapon, but Traoré raised a hand to stop him. No, Yusuf, he said firmly. This isn't your fight anymore. The conspirators, sensing their plan unraveling, tightened their grips on their weapons, but Traoré's presence held them at bay. He was no longer just a man. He was Burkina Faso itself, unyielding and unbroken. The standoff stretched on, each second heavy with possibility. Traoré's mind worked swiftly, calculating. He knew the conspirators' hesitation was his only leverage. You came for me, he said, addressing the leader directly. But you'll leave with nothing. Your masters will discard you the moment you fail. Walk away now, and you might still have a future. The leader's eyes narrowed, but doubt flickered in his expression. Traoré's moral strength, coupled with the loyalty of his team, was a force they hadn't anticipated. As the conspirators wavered, Traoré turned to Yusuf one last time. You'll carry this shame forever, he said, his voice low but piercing. But you can still choose who you are from this moment on. Yusuf collapsed again, sobbing, as the conspirators began to retreat, their resolve crumbling. Traoré stood tall, his team rallying around him, their weapons now raised in defiance. The clearing, once a stage for betrayal, had become a testament to resilience. The Burkina Faso clearing, once a stage for treachery, now bore witness to IBRAHIM Traoré's unyielding resolve. The conspirators, their confidence shattered by his defiance, retreated into the dense foliage, their footsteps fading into the oppressive silence. Traoré stood resolute, his loyal team forming a protective arc around him, their eyes burning with renewed purpose. Yusuf, crumpled on the ground, sobbed quietly, his betrayal laid bare. Traoré's gaze lingered on him, a storm of emotions, anger, sorrow, and a flicker of hope for redemption, churning within. This moment, he knew, would define not just his leadership, but the soul of a nation striving for dignity. Traoré turned to his team, his voice steady despite the weight of the ordeal. We move forward, he said, his words cutting through the tension. Burkina Faso needs us, now more than ever. Ousmane, still gripping his weapon, nodded, his admiration for Traoré deepening. The team began to reorganize, securing the convoy for the journey back to the main road. Traoré approached Yusuf, who looked up, his face streaked with tears. "Mr. President," Yusuf stammered, "I don't deserve your mercy." Traoré's expression was stern but not cruel. "No, you don't," he replied. "But I'm not giving you mercy for your sake. It's for the man you can still become." He crouched beside Yusuf, his voice low and deliberate. "You'll go to your family, tell them the truth. You'll live with this shame, but you'll also have a choice, to remain a traitor or to make amends. That's your burden now." Yusuf nodded, overwhelmed, as Traoré stood and signaled for the team to prepare him for transport back to Ouagadougou. The decision to spare Yusuf stunned Ousmane and the others, but they trusted Traoré's judgment. His leadership was not rooted in vengeance, but in the belief that even the fallen could rise again. As the convoy rolled out of the clearing, Traoré reflected on the fragility of trust and the resilience of purpose. The conspirators had underestimated him, but so had he underestimated the pressures that could sway a loyal heart. He glanced at the rural landscape, the fields and villages that fueled his reform. "Ousmane," he said, breaking the silence, "we need to strengthen our communities, not just with resources, but with hope. No one should feel they have to sell their soul to survive." Ousmane nodded, scribbling notes. "It starts with trust, sir. What you did back there, it's a message to everyone." Back in the capital, news of the thwarted plot spread, not as a tale of betrayal, but as a testament to Traoré's courage. At a rural innovation center, a crowd gathered to celebrate the Dignity Through Self-Sufficiency program, unaware of the morning's drama. Fatou, a young woman from Bobo Dioulasso, stood among them, clutching her mother Marie's book of dreams. Marie, a coordinator for the program, wiped tears as she oversaw the event. Malik, a boy once saved by a makeshift hospital, beamed beside her, holding a board of local success stories. Traoré took the stage, his simple attire reflecting his humility. "Today," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "we honor not policies but people, the hands and minds building Burkina Faso." The crowd roared, images of thriving farms and renovated schools flashing on a screen. Traoré's eyes found Fatou, who stepped forward to speak. "My mother taught me to fight for dreams," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "This center gives me the tools to grow food, to care for our land." Traoré embraced her, his heart swelling. This, he thought, was why he fought, not for power, but for moments like these. He addressed the cameras, his words pointed yet hopeful. "To those who doubt us, who call us naive, know this. Our strength lies in daily victories, in communities united for a better future." The crowd's applause drowned out the memory of the clearing. In a distant land, a former leader, Donald Trump, watched the broadcast. Later, in an interview, he admitted, "This Traoré guy's got something. He's doing it his way. Maybe I misjudged him." The words, unexpected, rippled across the globe, amplifying Traoré's message of resilience. In a small village, Traoré met Mamadou, a child clutching a new school uniform, a product of land reform funds. "Mr. President," Mamadou said, offering a drawing, "this is for you. We're learning because of you." Traoré knelt, his eyes misty. "No, Mamadou," he said, "you're learning because of you." The exchange, simple yet profound, encapsulated his vision, a Burkina Faso where every citizen felt valued, where betrayal could be met with redemption, and where hope outshone greed. Ibrahim Traoré's convoy rolled back toward Ouagadougou, the dust of the rural roads settling behind it, but the echoes of the clearing lingered in his mind. The betrayal by Yusuf, once unthinkable, had exposed the fragility of trust. Yet Traoré's choice to offer redemption over retribution had transformed a moment of weakness into a testament of strength. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light over Burkina Faso's fields, Traoré felt the weight of his role, not just as a president, but as a beacon for a nation's soul. His vision of dignity through self-sufficiency, tested by treachery, emerged stronger, a promise etched in the lives of those he served. In the weeks that followed, the story of the thwarted plot spread, not as a scandal, but as a narrative of resilience. At the Innovation Center, Fatu's words inspired others to pursue their dreams, while Marie's tireless work ensured the program's success. Malik's smile, once fragile, now radiated hope, a symbol of what collective effort could achieve. Traoré's address to the world, a rebuke to skeptics like Trump, resonated far beyond Burkina Faso's borders, earning reluctant respect from unlikely corners. His encounter with Mamadou, the child with the drawing, became a quiet legend, a reminder that leadership was measured in the futures it nurtured. Traoré knew the road ahead would be fraught. Foreign interests still loomed, and loyalty could falter under pressure. Yet, as he stood among his people, their applause a chorus of shared purpose, he felt unshakable. "We are not naive," he had told the cameras, and he meant it. Burkina Faso's strength lay in its people, in their daily triumphs and unyielding spirit. The clearing had been a crucible, but it forged a leader who chose hope over fear, unity over division, and a future where no one needed to sell their soul to survive.